Who? Us? Well, we're the Foamers, just a ragtag bunch of guys from New Zealand, brought together by the love of small bikes. This is Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, small bike paradise and our home for 3 days. We've come here to buy some small bikes for the trip of a lifetime.
No, seriously though, what do we do?
And while it might not look like it, this trip was the result of more than a year's planning.
Let's go for a walk. Just gonna go walk around the corner and see what they've got.
And that's me, there. I'm Callum, instigator of this adventure. I spent a couple of years living in Southeast Asia, but only really rode bikes after moving home to New Zealand, and it's always been a dream of mine to travel through the Far East, well, Southeast, on 2 wheels, and this was it finally happening. We landed in the capital of Malaysia and bought motorcycles the same day.
What's this?
After searching through several shops with our driver, we came across a small hole-in-the-wall operation called Universal Motorcycles Trading. This shop was a quintessential local spot, the kind of place that if you didn't know it was here, it'd be super easy to miss. Doubling as a dealer of new and second-hand bikes, the shop also had a full mechanic setup, but it was just on the pavement outside. No fancy workshops here. The bikes cost approximately 1,000 New Zealand dollars each, and we had top boxes fitted for storage on each bike. The shop also took care of all the paperwork for us. And just what exactly is this journey? 2,500 kilometers or 1,500 miles from the capital of Malaysia to the capital of Thailand in 7 days on small 100-ish cc motorcycles. Inspiration for this trip came from a couple of places, namely Kenichi Fujiwara, an inspirational motorcycle traveller from Japan, who prior to the days of social media traversed countless nations on multiple small bikes. And, well, who could forget Ed March from C90 Adventures? If you don't know who Ed March is, well, that's on you. In 2011, Ed March shipped his Honda C90 from the UK to Malaysia and rode it all the way home.
The local people just stopped us and told us that ads on the newspaper, on the local Malaysian newspaper.
Now, this was actually my second time in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I already knew a shop that I trusted as far as motorcycle parts went, so we rolled over there and I immediately got a new set of wheels and tyres. Andrew got his steering head bearings replaced and we all got our forks rebuilt.
Jangan goda, jangan rayu, kalau hamba belum terima. Jangan jeling, jangan pandang, kalau jiwa tidak menyinta. Duhai asmara, jangan melulu saja, bisikkanlah dulu, tanyakan hatiku. Tolong hamba, jangan ganggu, biar hamba hidup gembira. Alam luas, nampak indah, hamba tak mahu hidup bercinta.
And just as we were halfway through our modifications and ready to disappear, Thomas decided to join in on the Alloy Wheel Club and he got a set just as we left. These cost approximately $200 to $300 for the set of wheels and tyres.
Jangan pandang kalau jiwa tidak menyinta. Duhai asmara, jangan melulu saja, bisikkanlah dulu, tanyakan hatiku. Tolong hamba, jangan ganggu, biar hamba hidup gembira. Alam luas, nampak indah.
With our bikes all ready to go, we decided to give them a quick test and ride out to Batu Caves, a short distance from the city centre. It was here that we met our first curious local.
Yeah, well, I keep looking back every now and then. Hey. No, not local. No. Motorcycle holiday. Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Thailand. Yeah.
And then we checked out the incredible caves perched inside a mountain halfway up a cliff. On the way back from Batu Caves, we ended up stopping at the mechanics to buy some go-fast parts, and they would be used after the journey, but it was awesome to be able to get this kind of stuff just off the shelf in Malaysia.
Oil pump gear. Good, awesome. So how many cc does this make it? The Wave 100. Sticker.
And with that sorted, all the important stuff was taken care of. It was now time to go and check out and see what Kuala Lumpur had to offer on our last night in the city.
I spent about $3 to get this.
After a cheesy tourist photo in front of the Petronas Twin Towers, we were off on our first leg of the journey to Penang, Malaysia, over 400 kilometers away. Our day started smoothly till Thomas ran into an issue with his front wheel and I ran into an issue with my rear wheel. Thomas's wheel bearing collapsed completely, which we fixed at a local shop, of which the method to fix it was the exact same as the method that caused the issue, but it did seem to hold up for the rest of the trip. My swing arm adjuster had just lost its retaining nut and my wheel had come loose in the swing arm. That was a quick fix and we were back on the road pretty shortly. And we rode. 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 You see, I feel like this is the part no one tells you about with long distance motorcycle travel. We were overly ambitious and had planned 400 kilometers of travel on bikes in a single day, and these bikes could barely hold 75 to 80 kilometers per hour fully loaded at the best of times, and we foolishly ignored the topography of Malaysia in the planning of this trip. So the 400 kilometer journey ended up being a long way and felt much more than that. But we had a deadline, we had jobs to get back to in New Zealand, and we had no choice but to press on. And on. And on. And on. Eventually arriving at the man-made marvel known as the Sultan Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah Bridge, connecting Penang to Malaysia. This was the second of two bridges built connecting this bustling island to the mainland. And it was the longest of the two and the most recently built. At 24 kilometers long, the size of this creation is almost beyond words. It was so big that we actually stopped and took some photos for a few minutes.
What kind of photo are we doing? A photo. Like a selfie or a...
Riding the whole length of this bridge took us over half an hour. Finally, it was Andrew's turn for issues. Upon arriving in Penang, we found an issue where his engine would cut out in traffic, and it ended up actually being his carburetor almost completely falling off.
You want I do for you already and then you want I charge you 45.
Yes.
You want another one I charge you 20 or 55.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
And despite it being after 5 PM, a time where all motorcycle shops in our country would be shut, a local shop fixed it on the side of the road for only $15. By the time Andrew's bike was ready, it was quite late at night. We had a quick bite to eat, then got some rest ready for the border crossing the next day. This was one part of the trip we did not get much footage of. The border crossing was not something we felt comfortable filming, however it was a pretty smooth process. And once in Thailand, we got new SIM cards for the new network provider and we jumped on our bikes and rode to meet our new friend in Thailand, Nuttawut. Thailand, the land of smiles. Our first day across the border had us meeting a local named Nut. After connecting online through the love of small motorcycles, Nut invited us to stay at his family home in Songkhla, Thailand, which we gladly accepted. My life is so good right now. I couldn't get any better. Not only did he host us, but he took us to a classic bike show that night. And Thai classic bikes aren't exactly the kind of thing that spring to mind when you think classic and motorcycles in the same sentence. However, this show was divided into categories such as old, new, tidy, tattered, with the owners going so far as to polish the tread of the tyres prior to displaying them. And being the only foreigners there, and with myself speaking a small lick of Thai language, we ended up thrust onto the stage mid-show. This event could have been almost anywhere in Thailand. It was like countless provincial fairs that I've been to before, but it wasn't a lone Buddhist holiday that brought us together. it was the love of motorcycles.
พอนมี Yamaha 100เซ็ตมีพร้อมมี Honda 100พอนมี Honda 100ด้วยโอ้ยวันนี้เก่งมากขอบคุณมากครับ
You.
After our small dash of embarrassment, we ended up among the crowd till late at night, eventually ending up back at our hosts discussing the intricacies of small classic Hondas, despite speaking completely different languages.
ช่างที่ภาคเหนือลำปางคือเขาแบบเขาเนี่ย
The next day took us across the country to Krabi. En route, we experienced the only puncture of the whole trip. In my rear tyre, thanks to a tiny piece of bone, likely picked up at one of the many local food stalls we'd stopped at that morning. Now, based beside the ocean, Krabi saw us relaxing and trying to blend in with other tourists for the first time on the trip. It was the first stop on the journey where there were less locals than foreigners, and all three of us couldn't help but think about the night only 24 hours previous when we were on stage in front of a rural crowd at a classic motorcycle show. How wildly different these two facets of Thailand were, and which was better, well, it depends what you enjoy. But for us three Kiwis riding around those Krabi back streets late at night, I think we'd all wished we'd been able to spend another night with Nut. The next day was the smallest of the trip at just over 160 kilometres. We left late and rode in the midday sun, arriving in Phuket ready for an oil change, and the only other thing you can do in such a place with only one night spare, which is people watching. Thinking about the day that lay ahead, which was our longest day at over 450 kilometres from end to end, we're going to be riding through the breathtaking national park to Chongphon, Thailand.
Ah, yes. Yeah, but he called that so well.
Jumping on the bikes and setting off, we ended up exhausted already by mid-morning with over 3/4 of the day ahead. It's likely the reason we got almost no footage from this day, aside from passing a songtao of kids leaving a school at the end of the day.
It's good, right?
Huh? Yeah. Shit, yeah. By now, we were well over halfway and had only 2 days of riding left. Learning from our earlier days, we woke up before dawn and hit the road to get a head start. Spirits were high. We were heading to a town closer to our end goal, which is Bangkok. And the early start meant we might actually arrive in the next town before sundown. So we rode, and rode, and rode, and rode, and rode. Arriving finally at our destination, treating ourselves to a long-tailed boat ride to see the local fireflies, which of course we didn't really get any photos or footage of.
There you go, boys.
Before leaving Songkhram province, I took my friends to see the local train market, featured in a dozen viral videos and countless travel shows, including No Reservations by the late Anthony Bourdain.
รถไฟมา9 โมงนะคะ
Okay, come on, oi. Baloi.
ค่ะ9 โมงค่ะ
We gotta pin it, dudes. It's there at 9 o'clock. We gotta go. The train comes through.
How far away is it?
7-8 minutes.
Ding ding dong, là tay có ding ding dong, là phi có ding ding dong, mà non ding dong, là phi có ding ding dong, mà non ding dong, là phi có ding ding dong, mà non ding dong, là phi có ding ding dong. โลกน่าดูก็อยู่ดิงดองเอารีบจับจองดิงดองกันใหญ่ใครหน้าหนาวหนุ่มสาวชอบใจต่างนัดกันไว้ว่าจะไปดิงดองเรื่องดิงดองไม่ต้องอับอายทั่วโลกหญิงชายไม่ใช่ของแปลกจนชาติไหนทั้งไทยจีนแขกทุกคนอย่าแยกอยู่เพื่อดิงดองอย่าดิงดองที่ต้องเสี่ยงภัยพบเด็กอ่อนวัยแล้วไปปรับปรุงเห็นดิงดองเป็นของสนุกจะต้องติดคุกเพราะไอ้เรื่องดิงดองบางมีเมียก็แอบหนีมาเที่ยวโรงน้ำชาไปอาบอบนวด
We made a couple of stops along the way, one at a bike shop and the other at an incredible small bike museum known as LHM Motorcycle Museum.
So this is the LHM Motorcycle Museum in Kanchanaburi in Thailand. Basically, it started off as a dealership in the year 2507, and they've kept one of basically every single model, as far as I'm aware, of everything they're sold.
With only 100 kilometers to go on our journey, we were excited until we hit the traffic tailing into the capital of Thailand. Thai traffic rules dictate motorcycles must always keep left, no exceptions. So we spent a while creeping along with traffic and not actually lane splitting, until of course the locals started to blast by us one by one, and we eventually gathered up our courage and followed suit. After an arduous day, snaking through traffic, we had done it. We had made it. Arriving in the big city was surreal. Only a week before, this had just been a hopeful dream, but it was a reality. We had arrived. We had arrived in Bangkok, Thailand. This was one of the most incredible adventures we could ever have imagined. It was time to blow off some steam in Bangkok, the only way the foamers know how. Riding more motorbikes.
โอเค4กับ6ใช่ไหมหลัง6.1จ้าหน้า4.7โอ้ยผมแปลงดิสให้หมดแล้วจ้า This is what I've got อุ้ย Down? Yeah, down.
Not only did we take the opportunity to meet our online friends in real life, we ended up visiting the local Cub House, a shop opened by Honda Thailand. These shops retailed the brand new classic Honda line, and we were lucky enough to ride the Honda Monkey. And with our final motorcycle adventures completed, it was time to waste the rest of our days in Bangkok before flying home to New Zealand.
ไปเที่ยวหนองแสงเขามีแข่งบ้องไฟอ้ายบอกมาทางจดหมายจะกลับนาไรเมื่อฝนหล่นมาข่าวหายตัวอ้ายลับลาแล้วจดหมายมาหลอกกันทำไมควายอ้ายแต่ดอกคูณบานจนข้าวตระการเต็มทุ่งนาสวยฝนตกนานแล้วอยู่ไหนบ่เห็นตัวอ้ายหลอกน้องให้ลงคอ
Oh, and what happened with the bikes? Well, let this footage do the talking.
There's a lot of shit. Yo, dudes. Oh, it's got 42%. It said 20 before.
The heat fix it.
Oh, it's going down. Look, it's 27, 23.
They're listening to some super sweet R&B jams on the way here, eh? It's hot. How hot? Can you show me this picture right there, please? Oh. How was that?
Amazing.